Hello, and welcome to Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge of Vagabond Creative Studio. I'm very excited to be joined by Therese Horstgetter from the award-winning Manitowoc Public Library, and I'm so excited, probably visibly so, because we're going to be talking about books. Therese, how's it going?
Oh, good. We're always ready to talk books.
Welcome back to the show. I've just been like as giddy as a little schoolgirl, looking forward to today to talk about books.
Oh, well, we have a few to talk about at least. I know that we've talked before. We've had 2 Zoom meetings now that instead of discussing just a single book for our book discussion, we invited patrons to register and join us to discuss books that they've read and enjoyed. And then we made a list of them. And we actually have put the lists at our curbside service also, so that people can get a lot of good ideas for books to read. So
it really is an awesome way to get good ideas. I just have to say, the last time you were on the show, we were talking about books, and you gave a couple of recommendations. And there are books that I wouldn't have necessarily gravitated to naturally, but after we had the conversation and you gave a little summary, I was like, So I read 3 of them, and I thoroughly enjoyed all 3 of them, even though I wouldn't have necessarily expected to. So thank you. So yeah, let's talk about some of these book recommendations from that Zoom meeting.
We had a few less this time. People were busier over the holidays, but we still had a nice group of things. And from about 6 or 7 different people at least that had recommendations. So that makes it nice too. If you're bound to find something that you like once you have that many people recommending too, and that are pretty much avid readers.
Right. So if I put up this picture, are the 3 book covers in this picture, are these some that came out of that discussion then?
Yes. And actually, since I was going to be here talking about them, I am just listing the ones that I discussed. But as I said, we will have this list on Facebook. And we also have the list from each meeting that is available at curbside too. So even though we're not discussing that many here, there are a lot of more good ideas too.
And how fun to get recommendations from other community book lovers.
Pardon? Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fun to get recommendations from other community book lovers.
It is. That's one of our favorite things, starting out with what are you reading? And yeah, you could go for a long time with that.
So do you want to start with one of these books, Therese?
The World's Largest Man is the oldest of the 3 I had to recommend there. It is from 2016, written by Harrison Scott Key. He has a few other books out that I have not read. This is a memoir, and part of the description is that it is a riotous, tender story of a bookish Mississippi boy and his Bunyan-esque father. So they are from kind of opposite ends of this, I don't know, spectrum is the right word, but the dad is a coach, he's a hunter, he's a fisherman, and his son wants to give hugs and read books. And so it is kind of a tough memoir at times. We actually had this at a book discussion, and it was just a really good book that brought out a lot of discussion as to some of the treatments, some of the ways that the family worked, and especially, of course, Harrison and his father, and how he comes to terms with his father, tries to fit in, and then actually how he ends up realizing how much he has absorbed from his father once he becomes a man, once, he's an adult. So it did bring up a lot of good discussion. I think a lot of people would like it. It's with a memoir. I think memoirs are always kind of nice to read anyway, but this one just caught my eye with, the photo, the cover in the first place. And then there is a picture of the author, depending on which copy you would pick up. And the author's wearing a hat with antlers on too. So yeah,
Cute.
there's enough humor, even in parts that are kind of rough. He does have a good humorous input also.
Is it relatively contemporary?
Yes, I would say he is. I'm not sure exactly. I would say the author is in his 40s.
Oh,
So I would think, I don't remember exactly his age, but yeah, it was a good read and a good discussion. And yeah, I'd
is it
recommend
giving too much away if I ask you, does the title refer to his father as the world's largest man?
it is more like how big his father was to him. And just the kind of man he was and just his presence, everything about him, I think was that. Definitely not listed as a size kind of description, but
Right.
right.
And it seems like it's an important message too for dads that their actions and how they sort of behave as a dad has lasting impacts.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I think it's there were just some other funny parts that talked about it. It says he grew up in a Bible reading area, Bible reading women and men who either shot things or got women pregnant. And this was the way it started out. And his larger than life father, hunter, fighter, football coach, and it goes from there. His mother is mentioned, and I have to say there were moments that she had, but she is just kind of quietly on the side, it seems, for good parts of it. But yeah, definitely him and his dad, basically.
Fun. Awesome. Let's talk about the big door prize.
Oh, the Big Door Prize is about a small town and where most people kind of know each other, and a machine arrives at the local grocery store. And it is something like a photo booth that you would hop into and have your picture taken. But instead, for $2, you do a cheek swab, and then you get results that tell you what your future should have been. A little printout pops out telling you, oh, you should have been a pilot, you should have been, acrobat, something. And it may be a very kind of mainstream job, not all pilots and things, but so then what happens is some people are immediately changing their lives. Some are afraid to step into it. Some think it's just, nah, it's nothing, I'm not going to bother. But you get the full gamut of people's reactions to this, and then the reactions to their neighbors. And the other part is how some relationships, both very strong friendships, marriages, how families in general, just how people both react to this, to what they are informed of, and to each other, and kind of relook at the relationships they do have and where they are in life.
So does it cause conflicts between people that have a relationship? So for example, a husband finds out, oh, he was supposed to be a pilot, and he's like, see ya, honey, I gotta go. I mean, I imagine that would change the dynamics.
Saying too much about it, there are things that change along the way for people. Some for better, some for worse. But yeah, I just thought it was a pretty one. I had no idea what it was going to be, seeing the cover. Then once I opened it and saw what it was about, it's like, oh, and it was a good book.
And the cover is adorable. I do love the cover art a lot.
I was surprised at what it was, and it was definitely a different idea than something I've read before.
Is it more of a serious tone, or is it peppered with comedy, or?
There's both definitely in it. When you're, I think part of it is when you are looking at the way, and part of it made me think, oh, if my friends started doing that, what would I think, And so there was some of that going on. So it's not a complete drama, not a complete comedy. There's a nice mix of things as people observe each other and take a second look at each other and themselves.
Is it a book that compels you to keep reading?
I thought so. Yep.
Those are always fun. Awesome. Okay, cool. We've got, I know there's two more at least. I think the third one that you wanted to talk about was The Dreamers.
The Dreamers was one that I picked up by accident. It was a donation here, and I picked it up to just to look at it. The cover kind of caught my eye again, and it turns out to be probably one of the, well, I would say definitely the hardest read of the three. It has to do with a small town or kind of a remote college town. And the main character is, I believe it would be pronounced Mai, M-E-I, a quiet girl who hasn't really connected with a lot of the other students yet. She does have a roommate that she doesn't really know well. They're just roommates in passing. But one night her roommate came out after partying with friends, or came home and hopped up in her bunk, clothes on, shoes on, everything, and went to sleep. And in the afternoon, after Mai came back from classes, she realized her roommate is still there and hasn't moved. And they call paramedics, and she's alive, but she's asleep and they can't wake her up. They can tell she's dreaming because her eyes are moving. And so they moved her, I think they left her in the room at that time. Then it happened to another girl, and then to another. And so with what we have been going through, this is kind of a hard book. People are suddenly being quarantined and with masks on, and which is not going to ruin any part of the book. You kind of see where it's going, but it has some different turns. It focuses on Mai and a kind of eccentric male college student that get together and try to help people. This, whatever this is spreading them throughout the town shortly. So it's other families in town that are affected. It's not just the college students. And you will find out what happens to them. I don't want to say too much more than that, but there are some different outcomes. We'll leave it at that.
Do you feel good at the end? Can you say that at least, or?
It was good. And well, I think with a book of this nature, it was good and it was heartbreaking, both. You're going to get, with a book of this style, you don't think you're just going to get that perfect happy ending. But so it is, this one definitely is a lot of drama.
So was it written kind of in response to the pandemic we're currently experiencing, or was this, dreamed up prior to, and it just is influenced by reading it during a pandemic?
It is influenced by now. She actually published it in 2019.
Wow.
And that she had been working in the beginning of the book when she dedicates it, I believe, to her daughters. I don't have it handy, but she had both of her daughters while she was writing it, and it was published in 2019. So it definitely was not written based on what's happening now.
Do you think your interpretation would have been different if you had picked it up in like 2019, right when it was published, before any of the pandemic unfolded?
I think at this, what I would have to say is that I thought it was a great book. It had a really good read to it. I liked the characters in it, and there was definitely something a little different than I normally read to something like this. Or it's not a usual story that you would find. But I don't know how I would have felt differently if we hadn't been going through this, because I think it still emotionally pretty much grabs you.
Interesting.
Right.
Well, I've already downloaded it on the Libby app to listen to, so I'm excited. And so now you've got a Zoom book discussion that's coming up, right? And is that going to be then this Nothing to See Here book?
And that one, the cover of that one really caught my eye again. This is coming up in March. It is the story of oh, and I should say, this is going to be the single book we will discuss in March. We're going to go back to that format and just discuss the single book. And this one is something that we had selected that we had to kind of bypass with closing the library and not having things in person for a while. But it is the story of two girls who went to a boarding school, and they were involved in a little bit of a scandal, and one of the girls had to leave the school. And they didn't really keep in touch, but years later, one girl contacts the other and says, I really need your help. She's married to a politician, and she has stepchildren. And they are twins, and they spontaneously combust when they get upset.
Oh,
So, so they don't get injured. Their hair just, I mean, they just flame up. I don't know if that's.
So those are flames on the cover. I thought it was a skirt or something blowing up in the air, but so that's fire?
Fire. And so the two women, the big part is that the one is married to a politician. She's been moving up in life. She's the one who got to stay at the boarding school. The other one has a life that has just been kind of going nowhere. And she's kind of at loose ends and decides, well, okay, I'll give this a try. And there are probably about 8 main characters in this book. And I grew to like, even if you don't quite like them, they were good characters playing off of each other. So you have the one woman whose husband is kind of making his way in politics. So this is a concern that they can't control what's happening with the children.
Oh.
And so that's why she wants someone that can really help the kids and hopefully work on this situation. They have not found help otherwise. So I think it should be a pretty good book. There were strong characters. I think we should have a good discussion about it. And even if you don't plan to join the discussion, it's still a good book.
It sounds intriguing and certainly a unique storyline.
Oh, yes, it is. And it's not it's not as heavy as you would think. And this is one, too, that I have to say there is a little bit of humor, a little bit of lightness to go along with all the drama happening.
Nice. So Zoom book discussion, do you already have a date for when that's going to be?
It is March 16th, and it will happen at 11 in the morning. We will have a sign up from March 1st through the 12th, I believe, are the dates. So when you look on our events page, you'll see the registration date.
So viewers are invited to read the book or listen to the book and then register and participate in a book discussion about it for March 16th.
Yes, and we've always had a list of questions ahead of time with the book discussions. So when you are link for the meeting, you'll also be sent the list of questions. And whether you really want to join in or not, you are welcome to sign up and take place. We've had people come to some book discussions live that they didn't really finish the book, or we don't make anyone contribute. You are welcome to sit and just listen to how other people thought about the book. So
that's awesome. What a great opportunity, and what a great way to still maintain that connection and that love for sharing, stories with one another through a pandemic when we can't actually gather. That's wonderful.
People were really happy. Just to see that we started getting back together to talk about books, and I think they'll be really happy. I would assume we will offer more. We do not have another date yet after that, but that's a little bit out there yet. So by then, I will be decided as to what we're going to do for our next one.
Nice. So there's just one last thing I have to clear up. I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I did hear you say that a couple of the books appealed to you because of their cover. So that's okay to be drawn to a book, but not to make a judgment about it until you've read it, right?
I think so. I would not have thought Nothing to See Here, I think could have equally turned me the other way, just depending, because it has almost a cartoonish cover to it. And
Mm-hmm.
you thought that might have been a skirt or something, and it's fire. So, judging a book by its cover, yeah, that's a hard thing, and depending on how people are going to look at it, but I hope people will give it a try, whether or not they join, but I hope you will. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, yep, go ahead.
and can I just remind you, we have copies of the list if you come through curbside service. We can give you paper copies of these lists. And so just remember, call us for curbside if you have holds, or even if you just want to pick something like this up, you are more than welcome to. We can just get these for you too and have you stop in and pick them up.
That is awesome. Therese, thank you so much for joining us, sharing the love of books. I just want to show one more time, we were talking about Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker. We also talked about The Big Door Prize by M.O. Walsh and The World's Largest Man, a memoir by Harrison Scott Key. Teresa, it is always so delightful. I'm already looking forward to the next time, and I'm really looking forward to digging into these books.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks. We'll see you next time on Coffee on the Coast. Take care, everyone.